Nigeria's Covid-19 total confirmed cases hits 407 as Kano records first death. Nigeria Medical Association laments limited number of doctors as Cross River Governor orders civil servants to return to work. In international news, Italy reopens some shops as coronavirus lockdown eases. And in sport, Enugu State gets new commissioner for youths in sport.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Latest report from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control puts the number of COVID-19 confirmed cases in the country at 407 as 34 new cases were announced on Wednesday. The health agency said in a tweet the new cases were reported in 5 states: Lagos 18, Kano 12, Katsina 2, and 1 each in Delta and Niger State. Lagos remains the epicenter, while confirmed cases in Kano have been on the rise since the first confirmed case was announced on Sunday. And CDC also confirmed 128 patients have recovered and have been discharged, while 12 patients have died. The federal government has denied rumors that one of the visiting Chinese doctors has tested positive for COVID-19. Minister of Information and Culture Lai Mohammed said during the COVID-19 Task Force daily media briefing on Wednesday the news is false. Opinions were split when news broke that the Chinese medical experts had been invited to the country. The Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors and the Nigerian Medical Association described the invitation as an embarrassment to its members. The opposition People's Democratic Party, PDP, has also asked Nigerians to hold President Muhammadu Buhari responsible for any upsurge in COVID-19 infections and deaths that may occur while the Chinese medical team remains in the country. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has explained that Chinese doctors are not here to treat any COVID-19 patients but to complement ongoing efforts to tackle the pandemic. Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Boss Mustafa, maintains the Chinese doctors were invited and brought to the country by a Chinese engineering company, China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation, as part of its corporate social responsibility. It says the company has contracts for 10 billion naira worth of infrastructural projects in Nigeria. The National Assembly is considering recalling its members from recess to discuss and possibly approve pending COVID-19 interventions request by the federal government. A member of the House Committee on Media and Public Affairs says the Emergency Economic Stimulus Bill would be one of the issues that will be addressed. The Senate as well will have to consider and concur with the bill. The federal government says it will tender a 500 billion naira request and a revised 2020 budget. The lawmakers took a break in late March to cut the spread of the coronavirus disease. The House had earlier planned to reconvene for a possible amendment to the 2020 Appropriations Act, as the federal government now plans to reduce the national budget because of crashing crude oil prices. The federal government had revised downward the revenue projection for the 2020 budget by more than 3 trillion naira. It has also revised downwards the oil price benchmark from $57 to $30 per barrel. Meanwhile, at the task force press briefing on Wednesday, NCDC Director General Chikwe Ihekwezu revealed Nigeria has increased the testing capacity to 3,020 centers would be created in Lagos for collection of samples from those suspected to have contracted COVID-19. Ihekwezu also said door-to-door collection of samples would soon begin in Abuja. The NCDC says the problem the country faces presently was not the inadequacy of molecular laboratories, but how adequate samples would get to the labs for testing. The agency says the 12 molecular laboratories in the country with 1,500 testing capacity are not conducting enough tests. Ehekwazi said part of the measures to contain the spread of the virus was a change in strategy after more testing laboratories had been established. Cross River State chapter of the Nigerian Medical Association has expressed dismay over Governor Ben Ayado's order recalling all civil servants to work. The association says Cross River has only 33 doctors in the civil service and that they are the least paid in the country. NMA State Chairman Dr. Agam Ayuk and Secretary Dr. Ezoke Ekwoke have both said the recall of the civil servants is not in the best public health interest of the state. Ayuk says a doctor in Cross River Civil Service earns 46 to 54% of what his or her colleague earns across the country. The association says this critical time is the best for the state governor to reevaluate and address the human resource capacity and other deficits in the health sector. National leader of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Bola Tinubu, has urged the Nigerian government to make palliative payments to households through their bank verification numbers, BVN. The former Lagos State governor said the move would help cushion the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on Nigerians. Tinubu argued that the government can make direct deposits into prospective recipients' bank accounts using the BVN. The APC leader said the use of BVN would also be safer and would prevent violence and crime that may be the attendant consequence of physical cash distribution. Tinubu said the move would help deepen financial inclusion as it would encourage anyone without bank accounts to open one. Tinubu further says, quote, most families need relief. If relief is not forthcoming, these families risk hunger and its attendant suffering and wars.
Coming up, African stories. Food shortages in South Sudan worsened by COVID-19 pandemic. And later, international news. Italy reopens some shops as coronavirus lockdown eases.
You are watching AN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In African stories, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has extended the country's initial 14-day lockdown by an extra 3 weeks until May the 5th. He says this is part of efforts to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus. Isabel Nakia has the details.
Ugandans will have to continue staying home till the 5th of May. President Museveni says the country needs to fight and defeat the disease in the next days. But some Ugandans say life is hard without work.
I have 30 workers, but each of them is calling me asking me for money, telling me to send them food. I have run out of money.
Right now, we no longer work. We have no jobs. We need food and we need to take care of our children. Our children will soon be going back to school. We need money.
More than 50 cases of COVID-19 have been reported, but the health ministry believes it could be higher. It's trying to track down more than 18,000 people who arrived in March using the passenger manifest. The government sealed its borders and cancelled all international flights after a passenger on board an Ethiopian Airlines flight tested positive in late March. The country has also started testing cargo drivers who are continuing to ply the East African region. Other measures like the ban on public and private transport and social gatherings will stay. The extension of the lockdown comes after the WHO warned countries against lifting restrictions too early, as it could lead to a deadly resurgence of the disease.
Millions of South Sudanese people are facing food shortages as the coronavirus pandemic has worsened food insecurity in the country. This includes thousands in displaced persons camps. Reporter Patrick Oyet has the story.
First came the flooding late last year, then the locust invasion that worsened the economic crisis in South Sudan followed. Add to that the 6 years of civil war that has already devastated agricultural production at household levels, leading to hunger and acute malnutrition. The situation has forced South Sudan's government to seek help from aid agencies to assist those in need. But the challenge is getting aid to the needy.
But we're trying to do it in a place which is incredibly difficult, where the paucity of infrastructure, the inability for people to get access to markets, to actually leave their community to trade, is, I think, one of the hardest places in the world today.
The United Nations says it is still providing shelter to more than 180,000 South Sudanese displaced people. South Sudan's government says more than 1.2 million people are living in internally displaced people's camps in the capitals of the 10 states in the country. Juba says with coronavirus in the country now, the displaced people should return to their own homes to avoid crowding.
We totally depend on food distributed by aid agencies like WFP. I don't go to the market because I don't have money to buy anything. The food is okay for us adults, but my children always complain after eating for a week. They say they are tired of eating the same thing, but we have no other option.
Most food consumed in South Sudan is imported from neighboring countries. With measures being put in place to prevent the spread of Covid-19, many countries are reducing their export preserving food as they prepare for a possible longer period of lockdowns. South Sudan's Relief and Rehabilitation Commission says reduction in import of food will negatively affect the food security situation in South Sudan. At the displaced people's camps, aid agencies say they are putting up measures to stop the spread of coronavirus.
At the entry point, what we actually ensure it is happening is our beneficiaries that are coming to receive our ratio first start by hand washing. Everyone that comes for this food ratio receiving has to actually make sure washes their hands with the soap, and then comes and sits in a queue on chairs and ensuring that at least a distance of 1 to 3 meters is being observed.
South Sudan's government says it is concerned that food insecurity in the country could lead to cattle rustling and intercommunal violence.
Thousands of undocumented Ethiopian migrants are reportedly being deported from Saudi Arabia amid efforts to contain the spread of the deadly coronavirus pandemic. The Saudi government began cracking down on what it's called illegal expatriates since 2017. Tens of thousands have been sent back to their home countries. A news report says deportation has been an ever-present possibility for Ethiopian migrants working in Saudi Arabia without the necessary permits. Saudi Arabia's efforts to return the Ethiopian migrants have allegedly resumed after a 2-week break. More than 2,000 migrants arrived in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, in the first half of April, and more are expected in the coming weeks. The UN has warned the large-scale migratory movements could worsen the spread of the virus. Ethiopia has reported 82 cases of coronavirus and 3 deaths.
When we return, international news. Italy reopens some shops as coronavirus lockdown eases. And later, sports. Enugu State gets new commissioner for youths and sports.
You are watching ANN.
Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website, and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, African News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the international front, U.S. President Donald Trump announced 2 days ago he was cutting off funding for the World Health Organization because of its management of the COVID-19 pandemic. The action has received global condemnation. Even the Speaker of the House, the U.S. House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, called the move illegal.
U.S. President Donald Trump is drawing international criticism for threatening to pull American funding from the World Health Organization.
We regret the decision of the President of the United States to order a hold in funding to the World Health Organization.
Microsoft founder Bill Gates called the move dangerous, saying the world needs the WHO now more than ever. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says this is a time for unity in the global battle against this unprecedented virus, not a time to cut resources for the organization. The European Union's foreign policy chief also disapproved, saying there was no reason justifying this move. And the head of the African Union condemned Trump's decision as deeply regrettable. And China also weighed in, urging Washington to fulfill its obligations to the WHO. Beijing added Trump's move will hurt global efforts to fight the pandemic.
In particular, since the outbreak of COVID-19 under the leadership of Director General Tedros, the WHO has played a central coordinating role in joint pandemic control efforts. This has been recognized and praised by the international community. During this critical period, the decision by the US will weaken the ability of the WHO and undermine international cooperation in fighting the pandemic. This will affect all countries, including the US.
And no doubt, Italy has gone through some harrowing weeks as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. Most of the country has been on lockdown for weeks now, as it deals with nearly 165,000 cases and thousands of deaths. Now that the situation has peaked, the country feels it needs to start reopening its economy. It has begun by allowing some shops to open. Hamian Kitson reports from Abruzzo.
After 35 days of national lockdown, signs that life is slowly returning to normal. Shops selling books, stationery and children's clothes opening their doors again.
This is the first day we reopened. They allowed this sector really because it was one of the most requested.
In some way, we need to start from somewhere, we hope with caution and responsibility.
For us, it's very positive.
The new rules don't apply to all regions, but in Abruzzo, residents say it's a small step in the right direction.
Clearly, if some shops and businesses manage to restart, we can confront this situation better.
Slowly, they should reopen these businesses, or here we will all die of hunger. It is a tragedy like this.
Officially, Italy's second phase of its exit plan will start next month, when the current lockdown expires on the 3rd of May. Important sectors of the economy will be able to restart and people will be able to move more freely. But authorities warn easing of restrictions is a delicate balance.
It is still too early to say that we've overcome the critical phase, too early to return to the streets and live a normal life. We have to stay at home.
Finally, the figures are showing signs of hope, with fewer new cases and less people in intensive care. But the daily death toll is still high. More than 20,000 people have died, but it's hoped another 3 weeks of lockdown will help Italy edge closer to a life of normality.
This COVID-19 pandemic has hit the U.S. economy really hard. Unemployment figures are expected to be the highest ever recorded when the figures are released this month. This signals many businesses are troubled and struggling to survive through this pandemic.
Hi, thank you for choosing Barbecue Joe's.
Times are lean at Joe's Barbecue. Oh, the brisket is still tender and juicy.
Welcome, Barbecue Joe.
there just aren't as many people buying it these days.
Well, the frustration hit right when they told me that I was going to have to shut my dining room, and fear. But I had to take a deep breath and let that go.
Joe Housen has also had to let go 1/3 of his 100 employees at his 2 restaurants after sales plunged 40%. Now he depends solely on drive-through. Housen thought he was covered by business interruption insurance.
Yeah, you would think you know it's all good, but I don't know what happened on that. But it's no hope, with a business interruption. It's not there.
Paula Wells has been Joe's attorney since he opened nearly 15 years ago. She helped Housen navigate his way through the federal package for the Payroll Protection Program, or PPP.
The Payroll Protection Plan is basically a loan that you may not have to pay back, depending on all kinds of stipulations.
There were also a host of last-minute changes to the measure that basically fueled a nightmare on Elm, Commerce, and every other street. Wells has been inundated and is swamped with business.
Okay, would you like Joe's house on it or on this side?
Her chief counsel to clients right now has been, do what you need to stay open.
I'm not hearing anger yet. I just think this came so fast and it's so different than anything before.
And I got to keep my confidence up because I've got my employees that are looking at me. And if they see me down and out and depressed, then they're going to get that way.
Thank you.
Up next, sports. Enugu State gets new commissioner for youth and sports. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. Nzekwe Manfred has been appointed Enugu State's new commissioner for youth and sports. Manfred replaces Victor Okechi, who has been redeployed as the new commissioner for housing. Manfred is the former executive chairman of Oji River Local Government Council of the state. A FIFA former president, Sepp Blatter, says the United States would be capable of hosting the 2022 World Cup after an indictment from the Department of Justice detailed how FIFA executives were bribed into voting for Qatar to win hosting rights for 2022 and Russia for 2018. There has been no indication FIFA would consider moving the World Cup out of Qatar, despite a long list of concerns that include poor working conditions and infrastructure issues. In addition to the bribery issue, 34 stadium workers have reportedly died in the last 6 years. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.